Which three Ranger prospects have the best chance of making an impact on the Blue Shirts this season? We debate on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1125 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sport stops sporting the way we all want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So something a little bit different in today's episode. Everybody loves to talk prospects and, what the future holds for the Rangers or whichever your favorite team might be. But obviously, we got mostly Ranger fans here, and that's where the focus is going to be. Taking a look today at the three Ranger prospects that I feel have the best chance of making a significant impact with the Rangers for this upcoming season. Some quick ground rules here. I kind of just explained it, but I should probably take this a step further. So it's only for this upcoming season. So anybody that might be debuting, somewhere down the road, they're not going to be on this list. So you're not going to see Gabe Perreault today, even though I'm a big fan of Gabe Perreault. Think he's going to be a great Ranger one day, just probably not this upcoming season. Same thing for EJ Emery. I think that was a really nice pick for the Rangers this past, NHL draft in the first round there. But you're not going to see either one of these guys on this list because, again, this is a short list of just players that I think have the best chance for next season, just next season, making the biggest impact with this New York Ranger team. And the other rule here is that nobody that played playoff games for the Rangers last season is eligible either, so you're not going to see Matt Rempe on this list either, although I certainly expect Rempe to contribute to this team this year. But let's go ahead. No particular order. The first of the three prospects that we're going to discuss today in terms of the ones with the best chance of helping the Rangers in a big way this upcoming season. The first player is going to be Brennan Othmann, now 21 years old. He will turn 22 in season in January. A left winger, does play some right wing, and that might help his cause at one time or another because we've talked about how the Rangers they have a little bit more depth at left wing than right wing. Even with Lafreniere moving from the left side to the right side, that's probably still the case. But yeah, Bran Offman can play both wings, 6 feet tall, 175 pounds. Not the biggest player out there, but by all accounts, this guy is an absolute wrecking ball on the ice. He will throw the body quite a bit. He does play with some snarl and some edge, just an absolute beast. He's got a lot of skill to go along with all that. So a really nice pick here by the Rangers. He was drafted by the Rangers in the first round in 2021. He went number 16 overall. I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he was still available at that time when the Rangers picked that year, but they pounced. They got their guy. And a little piece of trivia, this was Chris Drury's first draft pick as the GM of the New York Rangers. He had been the assistant GM for a couple of years before that, but this was his first pick, as the guy, the general manager of this team. And as far as Offman goes, you got to figure he's knocking on the door about as much as anybody. He's got the chance to, of all the Ranger prospects, of all the players that might be ticketed to start the season in the AHL, this is the guy that, if and when he's called up, has the biggest chance, the biggest ceiling, the most opportunity to make a big impact on the New York Rangers. And of course, we saw Brennan Othmann this past season, made a quick 3-game cameo. No points for Othmann in those games, only averaged 9 minutes and 5 seconds of ice time, but he did have 6 shots on goal, 1 block shot, and 6 hits, and also got an opportunity to play with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider on the top line. That was against the Blackhawks. That was the game in which he debuted, and if I remember correctly, the Rangers were up by a really good margin toward the end of that game, at least 3 goals, and Laviolette and the coaching staff, they took advantage of it. They put Othmann out there with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. And, overall, I think he mostly looked good when he was up with the Rangers. Didn't do anything like otherworldly or anything like that. That first game against the Blackhawks was his best game. They limited his ice time a little bit in the other 2 games, and he was sent back down. But as far as offense is concerned, this looks like somebody, to me at least, that's ready to contribute. When you look at basically what he's done throughout his entire hockey career. And I realize there's a big jump from the AHL to the NHL. I get that. But you look at the numbers that he's put up. Last year was his first season with the Hartford Wolfpack, 67 games, 21 goals, 28 assists, 49 points. He was a minus 24, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And then also in the playoffs, 10 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, and he was a minus 6 in those 10 games. It's also worth pointing out, because I mentioned the scoring a little bit, and again, I know we're going like pretty far back into the way back machine and going down a couple levels of hockey here, but in the OHL, you guys heard me rave about this when he was doing it. He had a season with Flint where he had 50 goals and 47 assists for a total of 97 points in 66 games. Just absolutely ridiculous. So in addition to the snarl and the grit and the toughness and the edge, this is a very skilled offensive player as well. It does sound like, by all accounts, and I'm going by what I hear from scouts and people that are in the know with the Hartford Wolfpack. It's not like I broke down, every single shift that Brennan Offman took last season with the Hartford Wolfpack, but it sounds like, by all accounts, his biggest weakness is the defensive portion of his game. The Rangers, though, they mostly have defensively responsible forwards for the most part. So, I was thinking about that. If he was to be out there with like Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, and we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves saying that, but let's just roll with it. If he was out there with the two of them, they're both, solid defensive forwards for sure. They could pick up the slack if they need to. Maybe he ends up out there like on the third line, and maybe one of if he's going to play one of the wings, one of the other wingers would then probably be either Kakko or Cooley, both, solid defensive players in their own right. So, it's up to the Rangers, really. If he is a defensive liability, they have to come to the conclusion of whether or not it's worth it to just kind of live with that in exchange for what he might bring to the table from an offensive perspective and also from a physicality perspective as well. So we'll see. It's entirely possible they let him work on that and other areas of his game with the Wolfpack to start the seasons, but I will be very, very surprised if Brennan Offman does not get a good chunk of games with the Rangers for this upcoming season. And for what it's worth, for anybody that might have reservations about Offman's defensive abilities, it does sound like he was much better in that area in the second half of the season with the Wolfpack this past season than he was in the first half of the season. So he is working on it. And this is somebody that clearly does not lack confidence. Anybody that's ever seen an interview with Brennan Othmann, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. You can just kind of tell this is somebody that believes in himself. And I have no doubt he's going to go into Ranger camp absolutely hell-bent and with the goal that he wants to make this Ranger team. And that should be the goal. And I think they'll give him every opportunity to do so. We've seen in the past, it seems to be more with defensemen than forwards overall, but there's examples of both where the Rangers, they will give somebody who's young and inexperienced a chance to prove themselves in the NHL. We saw, for the defensemen, Braden Schneider was very young when he debuted. Fox and Lindgren were very young. Keandre Miller was very young. Those are all guys that, made their NHL debut with the New York Rangers. And then as far as forwards go, mixed results. We've seen Lafreniere and Kakko. They were obviously drafted very high. We saw Kravtsov and Elias Anderson go out there very early in their tenures. That didn't really go so well. And we saw Cooley, debut a couple of years ago. We saw Othmann himself debut this past season. So they don't really seem to have any qualms about it. If they feel you're ready, they're not going to let the age be a problem. They're going to give you your chance and see what you can do. As far as do I think he makes the opening night roster, let's have some fun here, man. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here against maybe my better judgment. I'm going to say yes. Brennan Othmann is going to make the opening night roster. He's going to be basically this year's Will Cooley. Of course, Will Cooley debuted 2 years ago, only 4 games that year. Little bit of a, I wouldn't say long shot for Cooley to make the roster from, this past season that just, started and concluded here. But he was less than 50%. By all accounts, it sounded like the odds were against Will Cooley making the team, and he made the team, and he never looked back. He was a part of this roster for the entire season. I could see the same thing happening with Bran Offman, and of course, we'll do our opening night projections a little bit later in the offseason here. But if he forces the issue and he looks good in training camp and he looks good in the preseason, I don't think the Rangers are going to hold him back. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to make the team. And if he does all those things, if he does show well for himself in training camp and in preseason, then you might see Brennan Othmann out there to start the season. I would think maybe like a third line role would probably make the most sense, right off the bat there. You could maybe put him on the fourth line. He has the physicality to do it, but somebody with as high of a draft pedigree as Brennan Othmann, I think you want to see him probably in a top 9 role to start the season. But we're going to keep everything rolling here. A couple other guys we want to discuss here as far as Ranger prospects who have the best chance of making a big-time impact with this team at next season. So we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing the way we all want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling. Big shout out to the everydayers. As always, means the world that you guys continue to tune in to this daily New York Ranger podcast. And going to keep everything rolling in the weeks and months ahead. Can't wait for the start of the season. We got the preseason beginning just next month, where we continue to go through our best and worst case scenarios for every Ranger that we project to make the opening night roster. I think in our next episode, we're probably going to look at Vincent Trocheck. Also going to look to line up some guests for you guys once again in the days and weeks ahead. But for today, let's go ahead and keep looking at our list of the top 3 Ranger prospects with the best chance to make a significant impact on the Rangers this upcoming season. Number 2, they're not ranked or anything, but the second guy we're talking about here is going to be 21-year-old Brett Berard. He will be 22 in September, right before the season starts. Mostly plays left wing. Not a big guy at all, 5'9", 174 pounds. So he's actually a little bit smaller than Bran Offman, but this is another guy that plays a lot bigger than his frame would suggest. And again, I'm not just, spitballing here. I'm going by, scouts who watch these players very closely, do this for a living. And, the little bit that I've seen of Brett Berard, I can attest to that as well. It does seem like he plays, bigger than his frame would have you think that he would play. But a high motor player, does a lot of the dirty work, not afraid to go to the dirty parts of the ring, fight for pucks in the corners and whatnot. Drafted by the Rangers in the 5th round in 2020. He went number 134 overall that season. He's also coming off of his first season as a member of the Hartford Wolfpack. He played 3 games for the Pack, the season before this last one. But, that's a cameo at best. This was his first real season as a member of the Hartford Wolfpack. And all he did was lead the team with 25 goals. Also was number 6 on the team with 23 assists and 3rd in points with 48. He was a minus 23. He also spent 3 seasons at Providence College, had 24 points in 36 games in what turned out to be his final season. But by all accounts, it looks like he took to the AHL very nicely last season and obviously had a very productive season. Once again, leading the team in goals. And a side note from Brett Berard here is he's part of what's looking like a really, really good class of 2020 draft class for the New York Rangers. So something good actually did happen in 2020. Go figure. But that was Jeff Gorton's final season as the Ranger GM, his last draft class. And he gave us a really nice parting gift, did Jeff Gorton. Lafreniere and Schneider both taken in the 1st round. He had Cooley taken in the 2nd round. Oliver Tarnstrom in the 3rd round. Dylan Garand in the 4th round. Evan Vierling in the 5th round. Brett Berard in the 5th round. Matt Rempe in the 6th round. And also Hugo Olas in the 7th round. So you've got Lafreniere, Schneider, Cooley, Garand, Berard, and Rempe. All those guys look like they could be, either anywhere from a superstar player to a, solid contributing player for this Ranger team going forward. So again, a really nice parting gift there from Jeff Gorton to all of us, really. But as far as, Berard, I was thinking about this too. With him and Othmann, they both are players that have more grittiness to their game than maybe their size would suggest. They'll both hit, they'll both play physical, they'll go to the dirty parts of the rink, all that stuff that we all like as Ranger fans. So it also makes me wonder a little bit if this somewhat explains the Rangers' offseason approach. Now, part of the reason the Rangers didn't go crazy in free agency, or really the biggest reason, is because they know they've got a lot of guys that are slated to become free agents next season, whether it's UFAs or RFAs. They've got guys in-house that they're going to have to re-sign, guys that are going to command a lot of years and a lot of dollars. So that's first and foremost. But I do wonder, because I think a lot of us want a little bit more grit, a little bit more physicality, and we thought maybe the Rangers would address that in free agency. The fact that they didn't do it, does that suggest that maybe Othmann and Berard are thought of higher, even higher than we already anticipated? Are these guys a bigger part of the Rangers' plans for this upcoming season than maybe we might realize, because they both do play with an edge. They both do play with some grittiness and some physicality. So, I mean, Othmann for sure. You got to figure, we're going to see a decent amount of Othmann this upcoming season. And for Berard, I mean, it's kind of the same deal. This guy is somebody that they didn't take him until the 5th round, but he's just steadily getting better and better and better. And he brings some of those things to the table as well in terms of physicality and toughness. And maybe Berard, maybe he's got a better chance of making the opening night roster, or at least being called up and being a strong contributor for this team than some of us might realize. And I'm bullish on Berard, but maybe they think even higher of him than I do, and maybe he will be a significant part of this team this season. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it is fun to think about these scenarios and fun to imagine Bran Offman and Brett Berard both coming up, giving the Rangers more of what they need, and just being solid contributing members to this team with obviously championship aspirations. Does Brett Berard make the opening night roster this season? I'm going to say I don't think he does, but I absolutely expect him to make his Ranger debut this season. And that kind of begs the question of what's it going to be like when he debuts? Are we going to get the situation that we got with Othmann last year and Cooley 2 years ago, where he's only up for 3 or 4 games, gets only a handful of minutes per night, and is just sent right back down to the AHL just as quickly? And there's nothing wrong with that approach. I like the fact that 2 years ago, Will Cooley got 4 games with the Rangers. I think it probably helped him last year. I think same thing with Othmann. Got 3 games last year, and now if he makes a team, at least he's had a taste of NHL action. He kind of knows what to expect. But is that what they do with Brett Berard, or do you see them, give him a little bit more rope? Does he make the team outright? Do they kind of just roll with him for a while going into the season? Does he get treated the way other young players, like some of the guys I mentioned before, got treated? Lafreniere and Kakko, those two I shouldn't even really count, because they got drafted so high that, of course, it was always likely, or at least possible, that they would skip the AHL altogether. I'm looking more at guys like K'Andre Miller, Braden Schneider. Will he kind of be in their boat where he gets the chance and he's given every opportunity to stick with the team? I certainly think that's possible. But if I had to bet on it right now, does Berard make the opening night roster? I'm going to say no. But I also think the first time the Rangers need a spark, more physicality, more toughness, maybe even some depth scoring, just a solid all-around player that they want to call up from the AHL, and somebody that they seem to be high on, I think Brett Berard is going to be that guy. One thing that does work in Berard's favor is it feels like he can kind of play on just about any line. Would he eventually, we've talked about that revolving door on the Mika Kreider line at right wing. Would he eventually get a look there? If not, is he a third liner? Could you put him on the 4th line? Now, again, with your prospects, you don't always want to put them on the 4th line because, they're only going to get so many minutes. But Brett Berard can play a 4th line style game. And this is not somebody that the Rangers took, 1st overall, 10th overall in the 1st round at all. This is not somebody that needs to be immediately in a top 9 role. So Brett Berard has that working in his favor as well. I think he's somebody that kind of fit in just about any spot in the lineup, and that versatility is always nice. But you guys know, all the everydayers, this guy is a personal favorite of mine ever since the Rangers drafted him. And I'm not a scout, but from what scouts were saying about him, it just kind of felt like, we might have something here. And I got to watch him a couple of times in the World Juniors. He excelled there, helped the United States win a gold medal. So personal favorite, and I'm going to be really, really excited when he makes his debut for the New York Rangers. And I don't know if that'll be on opening night, but I have every expectation that it will be at some point during this upcoming season. It's just kind of a matter of, what's his role going to be? Is it just a quick cameo to give him a taste of NHL action, or is he actually going to get into this lineup and be a big part of it, for a good chunk of the season, and maybe even into the playoffs as well? Time will tell, but definitely looking forward to seeing what Brett Berard can do. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. We got one more player to talk about today as far as Ranger prospects, and somebody that I think has the best chance to make an impact for the New York Rangers this upcoming season. And we will get to that in just a second. All right, one more player to talk about today. I'm actually going to do a couple of honorable mentions real quick here. I got 3 honorable mentions that I want to throw out there, and then I'll reveal the 3rd player that I believe has the best chance of making an impact with the Rangers this season. Honorable mention number 1, I'm going to go Dylan Garand, 4th round pick, goalie, somebody that he too also played on the World Juniors team. He played for Team Canada, did very well there. He spent the last couple of seasons with the Hartford Wolfpack. He actually got called up to the Rangers last year because what happened was Igor Shesterkin, Jonathan Quick were both injured at the same time. Their injuries overlapped ever so slightly, and so Louis Domingue and Dylan Garand were both called up. Domingue got the start and actually played very well for the Rangers in that game, but Garand was there on the bench, so he at least, was a part of NHL action. I mean, he didn't get into the game, but he was there. He was on the bench and just getting a quick look at, what life is like in the NHL. But I just get the feeling that, like, if anything happens, if there's any injury or anything, and knock on wood, because we don't want that to happen, I kind of get the feeling that this year the Rangers might call up Dylan Garand as opposed to Louis Domingue once again, just to get a look at this guy and see what he can do at the NHL level. He's somebody that's steadily gotten better for the Wolfpack. We'll see, but I think there's a decent chance that Dylan Garand could get called up. He's not going to make like a major impact because Igor and Quick are there, but he'll get a look at some point this season if the Rangers need to call up a goalie. I think also Adam Sikora, I don't think we're going to see him this season. He's still very young, but he is a former second-round pick by the Rangers. Another guy that's kind of undersized, but doesn't let that slow him down on the ice. Is a good all-around player and somebody that I think the Rangers have high hopes for. It's possible, if they want some more scoring depth, or if they just, maybe the trade deadline comes and goes and they don't really do anything that significant. Maybe you call up Adam Sikora, look to get a spark that way. It's at least possible. And one more name that I'll throw out there is going to be Matthew Robertson, kind of the forgotten man, somebody that was once a very highly thought of prospect for the Rangers. Hasn't really worked out that great. I mean, that's the weird thing about him, is you just don't hear his name thrown around that much whenever the Rangers are looking to call somebody up. But I just feel like at a certain point, it's going to be like sink or swim, and you got to take a chance at it. And Matthew Robertson, maybe he comes up and surprises some people. It's at least possible, but I don't think that's going to happen without any injury. And obviously, we don't want any injuries to happen. That is for sure. But as far as the third player that I want to mention today and talk about in a little bit greater detail, it's going to be Adam Edstrom, who we saw last season for 11 games, 23 years old. He'll be 24 in October, right at the start of the season there. Plays center and wing, so position versatility. That never hurt anybody either. 6 feet, 7 inches, 234 pounds, so an absolute giant. Drafted by the Rangers in the 6th round in 2019. He went number 161 overall. It's interesting. I went on Puckpedia earlier today, and they actually still have him listed on the Rangers NHL roster. I'm not so sure. I get the feeling he's probably going to start the season in the AHL with the Hartford Wolfpack, but he may also be one of the last couple of guys cut right before the season starts. And for the record, none of these players that I've mentioned here today, none of them have to pass through waivers or anything like that. They can be sent down to the Hartford Wolfpack without that being an issue. So just so that nobody's worried about that. But yeah, Edstrom, he was kind of the forgotten man last year because he got called up for one game in December, actually scored his first NHL goal during that game, and then got sent back down, came back up on February 12th, and then played 10 more games with the Rangers for a total of 11 games. And then his debut kind of got overshadowed a little bit by Matt Rempe, because when Edstrom was called back up in February, Matt Rempe made his NHL debut less than a week later. And it's a lot of fun, right? We got these two just gigantic wingers that are flanking Barclay Goodrow on the 4th line, and they're going out there and they're both wrecking balls and they're hitting everybody that moves. But Rempe kind of overshadowed him because of the theatrics and the fighting and whatnot. And, that it is what it is. Matt Rempe came up and took advantage of an opportunity and did what he felt he had to do to stay in the NHL. But Edstrom played well while he was here. Overall, I thought he looked good out there, never looked overwhelmed. 11 games with the Rangers last year, 2 goals. Again, the first one was in his NHL debut against the Ducks. He scored with like 3 seconds left to make it 5-1 Rangers. So that was awesome. He was also a +2 while he was up with the Rangers. Averaged only 8 minutes, 25 seconds of ice time, but he did have 30 hits in 11 games, which is a good amount. It doesn't sound like a staggering amount, but when you realize that he's only out there for 8 minutes and 25 seconds per game, yeah, that guy's going out there and throwing his weight around and taking full advantage of, being a big, tough, strong, physical player. So that was awesome to see. Last year was also basically his first season with the Wolfpack. He did play 3 regular season games and 5 playoff games with Hartford the season before that, but this was his first, full season as a member of the Hartford Wolfpack. 40 games, 11 goals, 5 assists, 16 points, and he was a -4. Only 4 players on the Hartford Wolfpack had more goals than Adam Edstrom. So maybe there's some offense buried under there too. I mean, you think of Edstrom and you think of the size and the toughness and the physicality, but if he can chip in offensively from time to time, obviously that's a positive thing as well. And yeah, he really didn't do anything wrong last season. I think it was just kind of a numbers thing. The Rangers were starting to get healthy a little bit, and there was this debate of, would Rempe get sent down? Would somebody like Johnny Brodzinski, would they expose him to waivers and try to send him down? There was kind of an ongoing debate there. And unfortunately for Adam Edstrom, he ended up being the odd man out through really no fault of his own. But I get the feeling this upcoming season will once again see Edstrom start the season in the AHL. But he's absolutely somebody that the Rangers could look to call up at some point next season. If you have an injury, if there's a situation where you're up against a team where you're expecting some trouble, or you just want more size and physicality in general, that might be the guy that the Rangers look to turn to. Would they call up Adam Edstrom and have him sub into the lineup in place of somebody like Sam Carrick, Jimmy Vesey, Johnny Brodzinski? That's certainly at least possible. It's going to depend on how everybody plays. And, Edstrom, I'll give him at least a chance of making the team out of training camp. It's certainly at least possible. But again, I think the more likely outcome here, you see him start the season with the AHL, but he would be one of the first couple of guys I would think the Rangers would look to call up, especially if you're looking for somebody to fill out the fourth line, the bottom six in general. If you're looking for more physicality, more toughness, I think Adam Edstrom might be one of the first guys that you look at if you're a member of the New York Rangers. But yeah, I mean, hey, look, him and Rempe being on the same line next season, don't tell me that wouldn't be fun. You've got two absolute monsters out there that are clearly very ready, willing, and able to throw the body a little bit. And Ranger fans love that. And that's, if you're one of those fans that thinks this team needs to get bigger, tougher, stronger, more physical, all that stuff, Rempe and Edstrom as the wingers on the fourth line, that should be music to your ears. So figure we can call it there for today. I did want to mention the Fantasy League once again. If you played last year, let me know. Email me, DM me on Twitter, save your spot. That's all you got to do. And you'll be back for this upcoming season. If you did not play this past season, same thing. Email me, DM me on Twitter, and we will save your spot in line. And hopefully we can squeeze as many people into the Fantasy League as possible. ESPN, which is the website that we use, the most players that are allowed in a league is 20. I would do more if that was possible. I don't think any other websites allow any more than that. But yeah, definitely reach out if you're interested, and we'll save your spot. And one more thing, playoff, overtime, game-winning goal stories. I want to hear them from you guys. The Rangers this past run in the playoffs, obviously, they won 4 games in overtime. And we've done this in the past. I've taken stories from people that have talked about where they were, who they were with, what they were doing. When Panarin scored in Game 7 overtime against the Penguins, we did the same thing with Derek Stepan, 2015 against the Caps. This year, we're doing it a little bit different. 4 games to choose from. Give me your best stories. Spare no details. Let me know exactly how it all went down in your household. Were you out at a bar? Were you with your old friend? Were you surrounded by Hurricanes fans when Barclay Goodrow scored in overtime? Whatever it might be, just have some fun with it. And let me know. Send me those stories, and we'll read those on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you next time.